Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're going deep into a topic we've all heard a lot about, I'm sure.
Trauma. Yeah.
Trauma.
Yeah.
But we're going to look at it from a different angle.
Hmm.
We're diving into the nitty-gritty of how trauma actually affects the brain, the neurobiology of trauma. I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion. You've brought some really great research to the table.
Yeah. We've got some great stuff. I think this is a field that's really kind of transforming how we understand and approach trauma and treatment.
Totally. We're talking about things like, toxic stress, the
Yeah.
brain's alarm system going haywire, even epigenetics,
Yeah.
how these experiences can actually echo through generations.
Yeah.
And, of course, the brain's incredible power to heal itself.
All that.
All of it.
Yeah. And I think it's a really important topic because, the more we can understand the neuroscience behind trauma, I think the better equipped we are to, really support individuals and families who have been impacted by these experiences.
Absolutely. So I guess the first question then is, why is it so important to really understand the neurobiology of trauma? What does that bring to the table?
Well, I think it's foundational,
Yeah.
right? It's like if you want to understand how your car works so you can, take care of it properly, you need to know what's going on under the hood.
Okay.
And so similarly, when we understand how trauma actually affects the brain at a, cellular level, at a deeper level, then we can start to actually, develop more effective strategies for treatment, for healing, for recovery.
Makes sense. So what is actually happening in the brain when someone experiences a trauma?
Well, so, our brains are really, wired for survival.
Right.
And so when we encounter any kind of threat, our brains, our bodies go into this, survival mode.
Hmm.
And it's often called, fight, flight, or freeze.
Right, like a surge of adrenaline, heart racing, maybe feeling frozen in place.
Exactly. Yep. And that's orchestrated by like a whole symphony of activity in the brain in different regions. Regions like the amygdala, which is kind of like our brain's security guard, always on the lookout for threats.
I like that analogy.
Yeah. The hippocampus, which is really involved in memory formation. And then the prefrontal cortex, which is sort of like the CEO of the brain.
Mhm.
It helps us make decisions, regulate our emotions, and really, kind of manage our actions and our thoughts.
So it's a full brain experience. What happens to those areas of the brain then when someone experiences trauma?
Well, so trauma can really disrupt the sort of smooth functioning of this whole system. You can imagine, like, if that security guard, the amygdala, gets stuck in overdrive,
Yeah.
right? Constantly sounding the alarm bells, even when there's no real danger present.
So like the brain's alarm system is just kind of stuck on high alert.
Totally. And that chronic state of alarm, what we call toxic stress, can have a really profound impact on the developing brain.
Especially in children.
Especially in children, right? So
Yeah.
you can imagine if a child is growing up in an environment where they're, constantly exposed to, violence or neglect or any kind of, severe adversity, their brains are constantly bathed in these stress hormones.
Right.
And so, over time, this can actually impair the development of these key brain areas.
It makes sense. It's we've heard a lot about toxic stress, but it's still just heartbreaking to hear about how it impacts, especially, children. But what about adults who experience trauma? Is the impact different for them?
Also, it can be significant for adults too. Trauma can lead to a whole range of mental health challenges.
Yeah.
Things like, anxiety, depression, PTSD,
Right.
Substance abuse. And it can also has a ripple effect on physical health.
Oh, really?
Yeah, increase the risk of things like heart disease or diabetes,
Yeah.
Autoimmune disorders.
So it really does impact the whole person. It's not just, in your head or
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really a mind-body experience.
It's a mind-body experience. Yeah. Okay, well, that's a great kind of overview of just, the basic impacts on the brain. But I know that you brought some research about this concept of epigenetics,
Yeah.
which is really interesting to me. And, for folks who may not be familiar with that, can you kind of explain what is epigenetics?
Yeah, so epigenetics is this really fascinating field that's, exploring how genes can be turned on or off by factors in our environment.
Okay.
So it's not changing the DNA sequence itself, but it's influencing how those genes are expressed.
Okay.
And what's really, kind of mind-blowing is that, there's a growing body of research that's suggesting that, traumatic experiences can actually alter gene expression.
Wow.
And that these alterations can have implications not only for, our own health and well-being, but potentially for the health of, future generations.
That's like trauma's echo kind of rippling through time.
It's a powerful concept. It really raises some profound questions about the intergenerational impact of trauma. But, before we get too, kind of caught up in that, I think it's really important to emphasize that, even though the effects of trauma can be, quite severe,
Hmm.
the brain has this incredible capacity for healing and resilience.
Okay, good. I was hoping we'd get there because this is, it can be a heavy topic. And it's nice to bring in that hope. So what does that resilience look like in the brain?
Well, one of the amazing things about the brain is that it's constantly rewiring itself based on our experiences.
Okay.
And this ability is called neuroplasticity, and it really allows the brain to adapt and learn and heal, even after, significant adversity.
So it's not a fixed system. It can change and it can evolve.
Exactly. And through, targeted therapies, through, supportive relationships,
Mhm.
through lifestyle changes, we can actually, help the brain rewire itself for recovery
Yeah.
and even to thrive after trauma.
Okay, now we're talking. So let's dive into those therapies. What are some of the things that can actually support this rewiring process? What can people do?
Well, let's talk about that. So there are some really amazing therapies out there that are really designed to harness that power of neuroplasticity. One that's gaining a lot of attention is called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
I've heard of that. That's the one with the eye movements, right?
Yeah.
Almost like you're watching a tennis match back and forth.
Exactly. So yeah, it involves these bilateral stimulations. Typically eye movements, but it can also be, tapping or sounds. And And while the exact mechanisms are still being, researched and we're learning more all the time, it seems like EMDR really helps the brain to kind of reprocess those traumatic memories in a way that reduces their emotional intensity.
Okay.
So it's not about erasing the memory, but it's about changing how it's stored in the brain.
So it's not controlling you so much. It doesn't have that same kind of emotional charge.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. Are there other therapies like that too that you've come across?
Yeah, so another one that's really effective is called cognitive processing therapy, or CPT.
Okay.
And this therapy really focuses on helping people to challenge those negative thought patterns and beliefs that often, take root after trauma.
Right. Because I would imagine, if you've been through something really traumatic, it's easy to start thinking things like, I'm not good enough, or the world is a dangerous place, or...
Exactly. Yeah, trauma can really distort our perceptions.
Yeah.
And CPT helps us to identify those distortions, to challenge them and replace them with more, balanced and realistic perspectives.
So it's like cognitive retraining for the brain. You're helping it to see things more clearly.
Exactly.
It's amazing to me how much power we have over our brains. We really can change those pathways. It's really cool. So we've got therapies. What about like relationships? Do relationships play a role in this healing process too?
Absolutely. I think one of the most powerful antidotes to trauma is connection, is feeling safe and supported and loved by others. When we feel connected to others, it helps to regulate our nervous system.
Okay.
It helps to, soothe that overactive amygdala. It helps to build resilience.
So it's almost like having a buffer against the effects of that toxic stress.
Exactly. And even simple acts of kindness and compassion, have been shown to have, really positive impacts on the brain.
Wow.
So, love and connection really are powerful forces for healing.
I love that. It's like an antidote to all of that toxic stress we were talking about. So we've got therapy, we've got relationships. What about things that we can do ourselves, like lifestyle changes?
Yeah.
Are there things that can help our brains heal from trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. Practices like mindfulness and meditation have been shown to have, really profound effects on the brain. They help to calm the nervous system, to reduce those stress hormones, and really promote emotional regulation.
Like hitting the reset button.
Exactly.
Giving your brain a break from that state of constant alert.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of things like exercise, getting out in nature, getting enough sleep.
Right.
These all play a really crucial role in supporting brain health and resilience.
Like giving your brain a spa day.
Right. Exactly.
Pamper it a little bit.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we have a lot of tools in our toolkit. But I think it's important to remember, too, that, healing from trauma, it's a journey. It's not like a destination.
Absolutely. It's not linear. There's going to be ups and downs, setbacks, breakthroughs. The key is to be patient with yourself, to practice self-compassion and, celebrate every step forward.
That's great advice. And remember, too, that seeking professional help is a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness.
Totally.
Just like you would take your car to a mechanic when it breaks down. It's okay to reach out to experts who really understand the complexities of trauma and how it affects the brain.
Absolutely. We don't have to do this alone.
Ah.
There are people who can help.
Okay, so we've talked about the science. We've talked about this incredible capacity for healing. And we've talked about some tools. What else is out there? What else did you find in the research that we can talk about?
I think it's been really, we've been focused on the mechanics of what happens in the brain after trauma.
Right.
But I also feel like, it's been really inspiring to see just how much research is out there.
Totally.
And all the different approaches to healing and recovery.
Right. Well, and speaking of that, what are some resources you'd recommend to people who are listening who want to kind of, continue this exploration and learn more?
Well, one of the most impactful studies, I think, in this field is the ACE study, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences.
Right. Yeah.
And this study was really groundbreaking in revealing the long-term impact of childhood trauma on, health and well-being.
Yeah. And I think it was really eye-opening for a lot of people because it really showed how common these experiences are.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not, something that just happens to, a small percentage of the population.
Right.
It's something that's quite widespread.
Yeah. What other resources are out there?
For folks who are interested in, really the science of early brain development
Okay.
and how these experiences, actually shape, our neural wiring, I would highly recommend checking out Harvard Center on the Developing Child. They have some excellent resources.
I love their website. I think they have those great videos, too, that really break down these complex topics.
Yeah, they do a great job of making it really accessible.
Yeah, for sure.
And then for folks who are, specifically interested in, childhood trauma, the Child Trauma Academy is another fantastic resource.
Yeah.
They offer training and research and resources for professionals who are working with children who've experienced trauma.
So many great organizations doing this work. It's really encouraging to see.
It is. It really speaks to, I think, the growing recognition of just how crucial it is to address trauma and its impact on individuals and families and really as a society.
Yeah. We've covered so much ground today.
We have.
Everything from the neuroscience to the stories of healing.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've learned so much. What a great deep dive.
Well, I'm glad. And, remember, this is just the beginning of the exploration.
That
And, the more we learn about the brain and its remarkable capacity for change, the more empowered I think we become to really heal and grow and thrive, even in the face of adversity.
That's a great takeaway. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of trauma and the brain. It has been fascinating. And to all of our listeners out there who have been touched by trauma, please know that healing is possible. Your brain is wired for resilience. And we'll see you next time.
Ready to unpack another fascinating topic.